This is why Total War is awesome. But did you know that everything you just saw came from mods? Meaning free extra content people like you and me have made for these games themselves? Mods are God-sent gifts to the people when done right. And for very few gaming series in this world is this as true as for the Total War series. That's why it's high time I show you why I love mods so much, why I find them essential for these games, and show you the absolute cream of the crop for every historical Total War game of the past 20 years. So buckle up and get ready to spend hours, days, and weeks filled with immersion and Total War experiences you otherwise wouldn't dare to dream of. But first, I really want to take a few seconds to tell you about Gilded Destiny, one of the strategy games I look forward to the most this year. Gilded Destiny is set in the 19th century Victorian era, spanning the entire globe in a new and innovative way, and is all about managing your state and war machine on a grand scale. One of the things that intrigued me in particular was the way the map works, as it essentially is an actual globe that you can spin and zoom in and out of, while at the same time experience the finer details down below. What's more is the inclusion of a true and deep population system, coupled with nation development and trade, and various decisions for historical and political flavor. If you love this as much as I do, and love a small team of passionate indie developers making awesome games, make sure to support Gilded Destiny's Kickstarter, which begins on March 5th, and receive various awesome rewards depending on your support. Make sure to also wishlist the game on Steam as well to keep up to date. All of the links are in the description. Thank you so much to Aquila Interactive for sponsoring this video. And we begin with the spiritually oldest, but definitely not least title first, Rome Remastered. The undisputed best mod for Rome Remastered in my eyes has to be none other than Rome Total Realism Imperium Surrectum, or just Imperium Surrectum for short. And the reason? Well, why don't you be the judge of that? Yeah, almost 2,000 provinces on one massively expanded map, a roster of fully remastered and remodeled units that keep expanding with every update, a completely new economy with all new buildings and modifiers, new religion and culture mechanics, a bunch of new traits, and not just regular ones, but dynamic traits like diseases occurring during sieges, improved and increased difficulty, and just so much more. We even have emergent factions now, and yes, you can play as them, which is just insane frankly. We have new campaign map visuals, not just for the map itself, but for models like navies, which are actually ported from Rome 2, and the battlefields of Rome Total War have never been more beautiful, not just because of the new and improved unit models, but because of the new shader and terrain visuals. Imperium Surrectum is just pure mass and quality in one, and it's far from done. In the little more than 2 years since the team began their work, the mod has mainly focused on improving and fleshing out the Greek and Hellenistic part of the world, and all that entails. This means that even though Imperium Surrectum offers literally hundreds of hours of new and massively improved gameplay time, there is still so much more to come, especially because in the next 6 months to a year, we are very likely to see the Romans finally get their share of the Imperium Surrectum love. Either way, RTR Imperium Surrectum is the undisputed best mod for Total War Rome Remastered, and you owe it to yourself to play it. Now for Medieval 2, a game with so many amazing mods, is an extremely tough one. That's why I've decided to partition this one just a bit more, still crowning the best one, but offering 2 runner-ups depending on your taste. The best mod for Medieval 2 then has to be none other than the Stainless Steel Historical Improvement Project, HIP for short, because HIP manages to create the best medieval immersion experience out there, simply by virtue of being brutal, deep, and by building on and diving ever deeper into the essence of what made both Medieval 2 and the original Stainless Steel mod so good to begin with. There are so many things I could say about HIP, like the fantastic unit models, the improved and beautiful map, or the sheer amount of factions that creates a dynamic medieval world, but I think the 2 main things that stand out here is number 1, the difficulty and the rebalancing of this game world. You see, if there is one thing this mod does, it's tough as nails. Units are expensive here, and so is their upkeep. But they also take a bit longer to recruit, and importantly, in the early game, knights and professional soldiers take a long time to replenish. This is because HIP attempts to simulate the Middle Ages as it was, with a few powerful armies being massively important rather than scores of armies all over, especially in the early game. What this does is that it makes you have personal relationships with each unit, with each army those units belong to, and it becomes so vital to keep your best men alive and well. expansion is slow in the early game, but it does ramp up in the mid to late game when you've hopefully managed to create a survivable economy. But to me, the most fun part of any game is that hardcore period when you fear for your life, and when you really have to suck it up and take advantage of every little opportunity. And for HIP, that's thankfully the case for at least the first 200 turns or so. The second amazing thing are all the new events and mechanics here. There are just so many new systems in HIP that makes this a much deeper experience. And even though I won't dive into all of them here, feel free to check out my video on this mod right here on the channel. I chose HIP as the best because it really delivers the essence of what made Medieval 2 so interesting in the first place, but also because it realizes the best and arguably deepest complete medieval experience as well, rather than being something completely different or something much more narrow and focused. But I did promise 2 runner-ups for Medieval 2, and 2 runner-ups you shall have. First of all, there is no best of Medieval 2 mods list without talking about Third Age Total War, and perhaps more specifically, Divide and Conquer. In total, Third Age Divide and Conquer is a tough-as-nails Total War conversion mod set in the Lord of the Rings universe, offering every major faction and character to play as. What's so fantastic about this mod is that it still has that deep Medieval 2 feel to it, but with that sense of realistic fantasy that comes with this universe. But also that the modders have managed to create even the major characters from this franchise, the recognizable units and monsters, and even tailor-made custom cities, both for custom battles, but importantly also for the campaign. It's just an insanely impressive mod that needs to be experienced if you love this universe, and that's why Third Age Divide and Conquer is one of the best Medieval 2 mods of all time. And finally, I couldn't make a second runner-up without mentioning Lucium Total War, which is another fantastic total overhaul mod, which this time transports us into the future of the 1700s. Lucium creates arguably the deepest and most immersive 18th century Total War recreation ever, even despite Empire Total War being a dedicated game for this time period. It is sad not having naval battles or most of the world present to be sure, but what Lucium lacks on those fronts, it more than makes up for in dedication, detail, and focus. Here we have amazing cultural diversity, fantastic and exciting game-changing events and decisions, an entirely new map, new music, and time-appropriate battles. In other words, Lucium Total War is nothing short of fantastic, is still in development, and I highly recommend it. And now for Empire Total War, and the best mod in my opinion has to be none other than Pirates Uber Alles. A peculiar name for a mod you might think, but other than offering a tailor-made campaign that actually lets you play as the pirates, PUA is so much more. I must admit that when I discovered it fully just this year, it blew my mind. Never before have I seen so much detail put into making so many of the campaign map city models look unique and full of historical buildings. Never have I seen this much attention to detail in terms of unique recruitment, new flags and appropriate music, details aimed at making each faction more unique, a ton of interesting historical scenarios for certain factions with unique campaigns, and of course, fantastic new units and effects on the battlefield that really make this mod shine so bright. PUA has been in development for years and years by now, and has to me very much gone under the radar, especially in comparison to the likes of Darth Mod and Empire 2, and I truly recommend you check it out, especially if you want to have your mind blown and wish to experience Empire Total War in a new and improved package. Napoleon Total War, hot damn! Now while I could mention the very promising and primarily online focused Field Commander Napoleon mod, which implements massive online battles and has fostered a loyal community, or again Darth Mod for Napoleon, which focuses more on the single player experience, I feel only one mod is currently truly deserving of the #1 spot here, and that has to be the Great War. The Great War is a total conversion mod for Napoleon that's still in development by the way, which transports us 200 years into the future, to World War I. So much work has gone into making this as authentic and time appropriate as possible, and it really shows. This is a Europe of empires, of French, German, Austrian, and Russian dominance, even though you can play virtually any of the factions present. We're given new army models, new technologies, and mostly everything that goes into this being a World War I focused campaign. But perhaps the biggest changes are to be found on the battlefield, where our old-timer muskets and cannons have been exchanged for deadly powerful and modernized artillery, massive cannons that truly pack a punch, and even tanks rolling across the field. The mod is far from done developing too, and even though the past 2 years haven't seen a bunch of new massive features, I think we might see some very exciting stuff coming up, as the devs have alluded to some cool new features being revealed. But if you wanted a World War I experience unlike any other, the Great War mod for Napoleon is nothing short of a must-play. For Shogun 2, I've decided to take a slightly different route, not crowning one mod the best, not doing runner-ups, but instead a combination of 2 mods that work perfectly together. These are Master of Strategy Shogun and Strongholds of the Samurai, and they come in a few different pack files, so make sure you have them correctly installed and in order. Either way, together, these two mods create the ultimate Shogun 2 experience for me, because they severely deepen the original experience. What we have been given here is an entirely new and massive map of Japan with a ton of new provinces, a bunch of new resources which actually matter for what you can build, new systems of trade and public order, morale, new unit types, and so much more. These new systems are mostly related to Master of Strategy Shogun, while Strongholds of the Samurai adds a number of new and unique settlements to Shogun 2, which includes all new fortresses and castle setups, which makes the entirety of Japan and your campaign feel a lot more dynamic and varied. Combined, these two mods create arguably the deepest and best Shogun 2 experience you can get. And if you're craving a new and exciting Shogun 2 game, then I highly recommend checking these out. Rome 2 is perhaps the game in the series most in need of a good and succulent overhaul mod. And as always with this dear series of ours, modders do not disappoint. 10 years later, Divide et Impera, DI for short, continues to impress and is continuously being updated. And as such, DI is the best mod for Rome 2 you could ever wish for. DI is an overhaul mod that aims to make Rome 2 as deep, immersive, and varied as possible, adding hundreds if not thousands of new units, new playable factions, wonders, all new mechanics like population systems, and just so much more. In fact, DI even has entirely new campaigns to Rome 2, with one focusing on the wars of Mithridates and Sulla, and another which turns the Wrath of Sparta campaign into Rome's war in Macedonia. There is so much more that can and should be said for DI, and if you're interested, I have an entire video dedicated to this mod, so go check it out if you're so inclined. That being said, if Rome 2 feels too bland, too easy, or too shallow for you, I can't recommend DI enough, and it really makes Rome 2 the game it should have been this whole time. Total War Attila, so close to my heart, offers an awesome campaign to begin with, so instead of focusing on the admittedly good overhaul mods or fixes for that campaign, I think there's only one mod that currently truly stands out as the best and essential combined campaign and battle mod for Attila, Medieval Kingdoms 1212 AD. MK1212 is a total overhaul mod for Attila that sends us a good 800 years into the future to the legendary medieval period, albeit the late medieval era. Here, every faction and every unit have been remade to immerse us into this new time period. But what's more is that so much effort has gone into changing up the entire experience by not only bringing in meaningful population systems tied to unit recruitment, but also an entirely new province system based on the traditional pre-Rome 2 systems. Each city is now its own region with up to 10 building slots, meaning there is so much more room for roleplay and that feeling of actually building up your empire and even playing tall. The modders have implemented things like all new trebuchet units and custom cities on the battlefield, a unique Holy Roman Empire system, a crusade system, and more will be implemented as time goes on. And as always, the mod is not even close to being finished, as we're still waiting for new and improved naval battles that fit the time period, and an all-new map that will help in creating an even better, bigger, and more historically accurate campaign. Medieval Kingdoms is one of the best mods I have ever played, and if you own Attila and want a Medieval 3, you really need to play this one. Take it from me. The next games on this list, while a bit different feeling, are also based in history, so I decided to add them as well. Shield Wall for Thrones of Britannia is a mod that deepens that game with new mechanics, units, and more, and is by and large the best way to play TOB, even though it sadly kinda harms the performance of that game. And I think for Three Kingdoms, Radius Overhaul mod, which adds a bunch of new units, tries to make the factions more distinct, revamps the economy and much more, does add a new fun experience to 3K that's different enough from vanilla that it actually feels fresh. And for Troy and Pharaoh, modder Ganassa has been and is hard at work at creating the best version those games can hope to become, with his agony mods for both games. These are overhaul mods which add new mechanics, unit balancing, new units and factions, and so on. And while Troy's agony is probably significantly larger than Pharaoh's at this point, Pharaoh's does add some very cool mechanics, like an actual population system tied to the workforce mechanic already in the game, a migration system, new building icons, and more. Either way, if you are interested in jumping back into any of these three titles, both Radius and Ganassa are doing amazing things to change up the flow and gameplay experience of both Three Kingdoms, Troy, and Pharaoh. Those were the best mods for every historical Total War game out there. These were certainly not easy picks, especially for a game like Medieval 2 with just so many incredible mods on offer. And the same goes for every other game on this list actually, with a sea of larger and smaller mods not mentioned here, but which makes a big difference. Either way, I think you'll find an immense wealth of gameplay in the mods listed, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts as well. Let me know in the comments if I forgot any incredible mods, if you agree with me or not, and remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.